Well, this I think is going to be a little bit different video than what I typically do, but I really just felt compelled to talk about it. I was just listening to the recent episode of Globebusters, where they're talking about all the SpaceX nonsense and the Tesla Roadster and the changing of the live feed. And I did want to stop and thank Bob for sharing my video about the Roadster and the temperatures and everything. I did kind of, as he pointed out, I did make a little typo there with the temperatures on one, and it only kind of proves the point that much more. 260 degrees Celsius versus Fahrenheit just makes it that much hotter. And indeed, we should be seeing, blistering of the paint. But even primarily, I was more thinking about the interior and the dashboard and all that stuff that's not even metal. Whatever those materials are, plastics and leathers and things that, yes, definitely should have been warping and blackening, more of a charring or whatever. But instead, what do we see? As Antonio just put up this video yesterday, some guy actually zoomed in and saw condensation on the windshield, actual moisture in the air hitting the cold glass. And so obviously this is completely fake in so many ways, and they did a really good job. You guys, as always, did a really good job of pointing out all the different errors and just all the absolute nonsense that it is. But it was when I was listening to Jeran talking about the changing of the live stream, how YouTube actually went back and altered the live stream, which most of us know about. And he was just kind of going off about how Elon Musk could get permission from YouTube to go and do such a thing.
So yeah, as far as what happened this week, which I was shocked because it's just something that you never expect to have happen. You think that people all play on the same playing field, we all have the same rules, and I know for my live feeds that there's been many times that I've either said something wrong or made a mistake, or and I wish I could go back and edit it. But you can't. You can't edit your live video, and it makes sense to me. That okay, I did it live. It wouldn't be fair if I were able to go in there and change things that I said or to cut parts out. So I've always known that that's the reason they have that rule, and it's a good rule. And then after I watched or after I did my live feed or my live stream talking about this whole mess, the actual launch and the landings, then it was the next day that somebody sent me the video of Smarter Every Day. And he had said in his little conversation there, he was talking to the camera and said, oh, well, as an engineer, one thing that really tickled my brain was these two video screens here on the bottom. They look similar, but they're actually different. And I was like, oh my goodness, because I had shown the night before that they were clearly the exact same. So he was way off when he said that, this is some sort of, he actually attributed it to great engineering and that these guys were so dialed in that they made the two screens look nearly identical when they were actually different. So, and that wasn't the case. They were actually the same screen. So then I wanted to go to his video just to see comments and see if people were telling him that it had already been proven that they were the same screen. And when I went there, the third or fourth comment that I read, somebody had said, hey, those screens got proven to be the same. And then somebody responded there, what do you mean? I can't even tell where Smarter Every Day is getting this footage because it's not the same as SpaceX is showing. So I kind of was like, what does he mean by that? So I said, well, let me go look at the SpaceX video. And I went there and they only had the one video. And so I just kind of started looking through it, but I wasn't looking for like changes because that's impossible. I just kind of was going through it, seeing, and sure enough, I went right to the end where the two things land, and I had just got done the night before showing everybody that they landed on the same pad. As Bob showing here. And then in the new feed on SpaceX's channel, that's a replaced video. Now they have two feeds. So then I started thinking, okay, what am I missing here? Like, oh, this must be an uploaded video later. So I go look at their channel. They only have the one video. There's not two. There's not one live feed and one upload. And so I'm really starting to get kind of like, this cannot be happening. Like it kind of breaks down everything. If somebody has the ability to go in and change a live feed, and they're given special permission for some reason, and that's why if you heard my rant and raving on that night, I kept saying, who the F is Elon Musk? Who the F is SpaceX? Because really, they're just some private corporation or private company. Why would they have permission, or why would they have authority to do something that nobody else can do? In fact, I told Eddie Bravo, I said, Eddie, you got to do this to Joe Rogan. I said, Joe Rogan does live feeds, so he knows. I said, tell him that you said something last week or the week before that you didn't like that you said, and tell him, can he please go edit it? And I said, he'll come back and say, no, of course we can't edit a live feed, and then say, oh, you can't edit a live feed? You can't, replace it with something else? And Joe Rogan would say, no, of course we know that. That's why we're not allowed to do that. And then tell him, well, why was SpaceX allowed to do that the other day? Because this is the kind of thing people need to start understanding, that what is so special about space agencies that, they did something that no news company has been able to do, I'm sure. And if anybody has examples of this happening somewhere else, which I don't know really how you would have that, it's kind of tough to have that evidence. Because like even in my case, luckily Smarter Every Day and a bunch of other people have these feeds, but really it comes down to their word against ours, because they've essentially replaced their live stream with footage that they put in after. It's just something that's not allowed, and it really tears apart everything, because really then we go through and the things that we show or the videos we make can be the next day nonsense. We could have said something, hey, this is what NASA did here in the spacewalk. Well, the next day that whole thing can be gone, because it can just be replaced with a new video, which is something nobody else can do. So I was all pissed off about it. I'm still, I've sent emails to people at both companies trying to find out exactly who's responsible for doing that, and that it goes against everything that's ethical. All ethics are out the window if you're going to allow people to change history. Now, I would be okay with it if under their video it said edited or re-uploaded, or this portion of the video was changed on this date. It says none of that. It says streamed live and the date, and that's it. So anybody looking at that would come to the conclusion, and rightfully so, that is a live, as presented live video, and it's not. It's been changed, and they changed a couple things. I went through and matched it up with mine. It's a difference of about 8 minutes total on the video. They mostly got rid of some dead time at the beginning, but also many people were talking about that moment where at the end of the video, the shell, the kind of top pod opened up and you could see the car in it. And a lot of people were saying, oh, CGI mistake, this happened way too late. Well, in the new video, they went back and actually placed that scene at the right time. So when the thing popped open, which never happened on the original live feed. So that, plus the landings, plus the camera angles, and they also made one of their announcers sound, the announcer says, oh, and those two screens you see below, they look similar, but they actually represent different feeds from each rocket, which was not true, that they were the same. But then again, now if you go watch that, it makes sense, because what he's saying, they've replaced the video. So now it is true.
Right.
It's just crap.
Didn't Destin also say something like that, Smarter Every Day, when he was basically making excuses for it, saying, oh yeah, they look really, really the same, but they're really not.
Yeah, and not even so much excuses as he was saying it's a sign of great engineering, and that it tickles his insides because of how amazing it was that they dialed this in so perfectly that the video streams looked identical, and they were actually different when they were actually the same feed. So until the next day. So really, everyone should have huge problems with this, because it's really not something like we've ever seen before. There's no other. If you think about like TV, think of TiVo. When you record something on TiVo or a DVR, and say you record a live basketball game or whatever, the basketball game or the basketball league, the NBA, doesn't have permission to then go into the recorded live game and change something about that video. It doesn't even make sense when you think about it. It's like, no, that was a live video. I saved it live. So I can't even really think of anywhere else that this kind of thing could ever be allowed. I can't picture any situation where Crybaby Musk went to Google, and how would you even ask to do that? How do you ask somebody, hey, can I edit my live video? They should laugh you out of the building. It just doesn't make any sense. Why would they be allowed? And it should tell you that the space agencies have some sort of pull, especially one that's not even a government agency. They're supposedly private. Why would any private company be given permission to do something that the other 100,000 private companies on YouTube are not allowed to do. So everybody should have a problem with it. It really creates a whole new playing field, and that's what really upset me. I talked about a fair playing field. If people lie to you, that's a fair fight, because they're lying to you, and you have the ability to lie to them if you want to be that kind of person. But when it comes to doing things like this, that's not a fair fight. I mean, there's no possible way for me to edit a live feed. And imagine if I had that permission to where I was allowed to go in and change my live feeds, but nobody else was. Well, everybody would have the biggest problem with that. So this is on a much bigger scale and a much scarier scale when you've got.
and oh dear. And I'm not laughing at Jeran or laughing at anyone. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I really do think that it just highlights the underlying issue, the big picture topic, in such a perfect way, right? Because even after, what is it, like 2 going on 3 years of analyzing all this fake space garbage, and NASA and all the other space agencies and Freemasonry, this whole conspiracy, this biggest conspiracy, the biggest lie that's ever been put on humanity. But it highlights just sort of the bigger issue beyond just even cosmology, beyond flat Earth, beyond faking space, but just the big picture conspiracy in such an acute way. Because honestly, I mean, it is a little funny to hear Jeran, to hear you talking about, how could Elon Musk just call up Google and get permission when, of course none of us could ever do such a thing, or could Joe Rogan get permission to change a live stream? I mean, of course, obviously none of us could ever get permission to do such a thing. And again, and all of you guys, Jeran and Bob and Iru and Antonio, who was a guest on there the other day, and you guys are all really smart guys, and I do have a lot of respect for all of you. And I watch the show, I watch your channels, all your research, and all the debunking of all these things. I mean, the evidence is overwhelming, right, for all this fakery. And it's just kind of ironic because when we're doing this research, and we're dealing with people who are kind of on the outside looking in, and they're the skeptics and they're the naysayers. And one of the most common objections we hear from people is, like, how could they perpetuate such a massive hoax? How could so many people, how could so many agencies, so many people within even a single space agency like NASA, how could such a deception be pulled off, right? There's just too many people involved, and they're all lying, and they're all, all this stuff. And, we have to try and explain to them how the compartmentalization works and how big the conspiracy can be, and yet it's controlled just by a relatively small number of people at the top of, say, how many people at NASA, what percentage actually know that it's all fake? And the same thing goes for things like SpaceX or the ESA or whatever. But they're all doing it. We've proven this, that they're all faking the parts of when they go to space. But now, all of a sudden there's this kind of this jarring reality, or this jarring twist, right? Where not only, now we're dealing with a corporation in Google who owns YouTube, where, the implications are that they are in cooperation with this whole hoax, and with this whole, this whole deception. And I think if you're able to stop and really understand just how big this conspiracy is, just how big this control mechanism, or the elites, or whatever you want to call it, this Illuminati conspiracy, how big it is, it honestly should not be something that even makes you blink, or should not be a surprise to anyone that SpaceX was able to get this special treatment to change a live stream. And honestly, I think the reality is that changing a live stream video was probably one of the tamer things that was done that day by this whole cabal, or by the powers that should not be. And so really what we're getting at is just the question of, do you really understand what we're up against, what we're dealing with, what we're facing, how the true nature and the true agenda behind this deception that goes, it's not just an issue of space agencies, either governmental or private, having this kind of quote unquote pull. It's the realization that I'm hoping I'm hoping to kind of start this dialogue to help people understand that there's zero difference between NASA or SpaceX or Google or, pick any Fortune 500 company, any large corporation that's traded on the stock market, any government, anything that is part of the system, this worldly system, that is really all controlled. And so that's what I mean by it's kind of ironic that when we're dealing with the people who have a hard time believing that space could be faked by all these different participating entities, really that's actually a small fraction of how big and pervasive the conspiracy really is, because we're talking about something that goes way, way back into history and into all the the Royal Society, the scientific societies, the Renaissance. We're talking about all these figures of science, and I've been trying to do all this research to compile and to show the common denominator of all these occult influences behind it all. And again, when you bring it to the present day, whether it's the governments, Washington, D.C. if you just look at all the architecture in the buildings, it's a temple complex. It is a pagan temple complex of the Mystery Babylon religion, of this occult, satanic religion, these elites. It's all right in our faces, and it's been there all the time, even the layouts of the streets and all these megalithic structures that they've built that are all, they disguise them as monuments and disguise them as government buildings, but they're temples. But these are satanic edifices. And the true nature of Freemasonry, if you understand the satanic Luciferian nature behind that, and if you understand all the connections that go into NASA and the forming of NASA and the occult origins of the Nazis and the SS and all of their, all the technology and research that we then absorbed and brought over with Operation Paperclip and all that, it's the common denominator that comes up again and again and again. So really, I'm just stopping here to point to this reality. You've now proven, Rick, you now have the proof in front of you that, Google and YouTube are not above participating in this. This hoax is bigger than just space agencies. It's bigger than Elon Musk. The idea that Elon Musk had to go and that to be emailing these companies and trying to figure out how did they get permission to change the live stream is you might as well be emailing the Pentagon and asking how they allowed $2.3 trillion to be, go missing the day before 9/11. Do we really not understand at this point, how big this conspiracy is? How it's not limited to governments, it's not limited to corporations, it's not limited to certain countries, it's not even limited to the space hoax. It is bigger than that. And my hope is that it just, perhaps at this point, you could really stop and think about, the bigger picture. Because it's not a game, right? When we talk about, we're hearing you talk about, it's not a fair fight, right? It's one thing to lie, but then to be able to go change the live stream so that, you're changing history, that's not even a fair fight anymore. And to even say those things, right? It's do you really not understand what has been going on for our entire lifetimes, if not however many generations before, and the true genuine evil that is behind this deception, that you see a part of it, right? And you see it really well. And I love all the stuff that you guys put together, and in so many ways it's so right on. But if you don't yet understand that this is not just about stealing money through NASA, it's not just about selling Tesla cars or whatever. This is a spiritual deception. It is a spiritual agenda, and it is absolutely aimed directly at God, the God of the Bible. And how much more, it's so ironic because, when you're dealing with the people who they have the evidence, with this latest Tesla car thing, right? It's you can show them evidence after evidence and put it right in front of their face, and they just refuse to see, and they just make excuses, right? And to the point where you're just banging your head against the table going, how much more evidence do you need? How much more do you need it spelled out for you, right? And that's just about the question of space. But when we're talking about the bigger pictures, the bigger reality, the question of who God is, who we are, What is this all about? Why is this happening? Why are we dealing with this kind of deception? Is this really just some sort of the biggest lie, or is this true, genuine, palpable evil that we are dealing with here? Is there such a thing as true, genuine evil? You know, it's one thing to talk about, the lying Freemasons and their involvement with the Apollo programs and NASA and all this stuff, but if you really stop and get into like what goes on in these these secret societies, if you've really ever stopped and researched things like victims of satanic ritual abuse and all the survivors, there's scores of testimonies of people who've been through ritualistic abuse. And the guy the boy who was a survivor of this horrific experience at Bohemian Grove. I can't think of his name right now, but I mean, it's enough to just make you sick. It is evil. So yeah, playing fair, fighting fair. I mean, this is why in some ways it's hard for me to comprehend why, making videos to talk about objections with things like the conference and all this dust up with Robbie and disagreements is like why that would be so controversial, or why that would be so, why, or people that are so offended by the Bible or by biblical literalism or by faith in Jesus, like, oh, that's part of, do you understand that the people that are behind the things that you're trying to expose, do you really understand like how big this is, like how evil it is, like how people are being murdered all the time and sacrificed and raped and just things that I could not even describe without breaking into tears? Changing a live stream, fighting fair. I mean, these people worship Satan, and that is not a joke. And this is not a game. This evil is real. And you can't keep dodging the question of like what that means in terms of who God is. And this trying to demonize the Bible and blame Christianity for why these things are going on, and trying to continue to cling to this belief that yes, these people are all into the occult and they're all into all this stuff, but there's still truth in there, and we're still just going to kind of pick out the meat and spit out the bones, right? We're still going to find the truth that they're trying to keep from us, and all this idea of trying to reclaim these esoteric truths and this deeper mystical knowledge and these new age beliefs that somehow they've misused. But if we could only get a hold of them and use it for good, I mean, man, how long are you guys going to cling to this delusion? You are smart guys. But just like all these people who have all the evidence put in their faces, but they still believe that car is floating in space, even though it's just the most ridiculous thing in the world, you're still clinging to this idea that on the one hand, you're embracing, this new age spirituality which leaves no basis for true morality, no objective right and wrong. There's no such thing as sin. If you reject the idea of sin that is defined by the Creator, defined by God, but that you want to turn around and complain about how the powers that be are lying and stealing and cheating and killing, and in short, they're breaking a moral law, committing sin in an objective way. Because if it's not objective, then there's no such thing as right or wrong. It's all relative. It's all fluid. It's all subjective. It's all a matter of perspective, right? Your truth is your truth and my truth is my truth. What do you think they believe? What do you think Elon Musk, I mean, I did a video a few months ago showing a tweet that Elon Musk had done, talking about how he'd been focusing on his meditation and he'd actually broken through his crown chakra and opened his third eye. What spirituality is Elon Musk embracing? It's the same occult new age spirituality. So supposedly, I mean, if there's good in that, why, he's achieved a sort of a pivotal stage towards his enlightenment, right? He's opened his third eye. And yet he's participating in what? He's part of all this, not just these lies about space and all this garbage, but then the artificial intelligence and transhumanism and the neural lace and connecting our minds to machines, and we got to figure out how to do that without we can't be made obsolete in the face of AI and dealing with all that. So it's like, how many more ways can we put the evidence in front of you guys? The spiritual evidence, the moral evidence, the conspiracy evidence, showing you that, like, Satanism, the Satanism that is propelling all the stuff you want to expose, is the same message that is behind the New Age spirituality that is still seducing so many people in the truth movement. It's the same lie. So, okay, so you get the fact that this is all fake, and these rockets, they're launching rockets up into the sky, and then they arc over and they fall back down or whatever, and all the video feeds and all that it's all fake. Yeah, they have a certain amount of technology, they have a certain amount of knowledge, right? They have a certain amount of ability to launch things up and play with video feeds and fake this whole big show, this whole big illusion. But that's all it is, and it's the exact same parallel. It's a perfect parallel. It's a perfect analogy for the broader spiritual deception. Yes, Satan and the fallen angels, they have a certain amount of knowledge. They have a certain amount of spiritual ability. They have a certain amount of things that you can experience through meditation, through rituals, through crystals, through all this stuff, through magic. It's always been around. It's nothing new. And it's those deceptive experiences, those deceptive little nuggets of, seems like knowledge that has been deceiving people all throughout history, and that has perpetuated this whole lie. There would be no Copernican universe if it was not for the occult. And I've been showing this. Lots of people have been showing this. That's where it all comes from. From the Hermetic texts, from Kabbalah and alchemy. I mean, you can trace it all. We're connecting the dots more and more all the time. So you reject this little piece of it, the space travel piece and the solar system and the Copernican cosmology, but you're still enamored by the idea of, being your own God, of God being a little piece of God being in all of us, trying to reconnect with our inner divinity. The quest for spiritual enlightenment, the quest for defining God according to our own terms, defining morality according to our own terms. I mean, this is the same message. I could turn on the TV right now and it's being played 100 different ways. Hollywood is pumping this message out 100 different ways every week. Deifying humanity, deifying ourselves. Believing in a creator, but that creator is still really what you're saying is that we're it. God is in us. It's the same thing that Elon Musk and all these guys believe. But they're just deceived too. All the people that own all these, that are the CEOs and on the boards of all these Illuminati corporations, they've bought into the same lie. They've rejected that oppressive God, and his oppressive morality, and his oppressive message of Christ dying on the cross for our sins. I mean, you think the Bible is really this whole nonsense about the Bible being a control mechanism for the masses is just sheer utter ignorance. It is. It's nonsense. The Bible is the only thing that explains everything that you are clearly still not grasping. Like, I didn't need to discover that there was no such thing as space and that there was no curvature and the Earth was actually flat to know that NASA and Google were absolutely control. I knew that years ago, right? Because I know who the God of this world is. I know how the whole thing works. Millions of us do. And a lot of the viewers of Globebusters, and whether you are offended by this video or not, I don't know. I'll continue to watch and continue to enjoy the good research, but you guys have a lot of viewers who are Christians and will continue to, and just trying to speak to the fact that, like, you're still trying to make sense out of so many things, trying to make sense out of the UFOs and the aliens and what's all that about, and the Bible explains it all, you guys. All the the coming one world economic system, the digital currency, you know what I mean? What does that have to do with faking space? It has everything to do with it. It's all one thing. Artificial intelligence, transhumanism, the idea of, we're gonna break through barriers and we're gonna use technology to to conquer all our problems. You know, it's all just little variations of the same underlying false humanistic gospel, this Luciferian gospel. And there's a million different ways you can buy into it, whether you believe in space or not. But yeah, that's why it's not a game. I mean, if you just sit there and absorb like what that means, that yeah, there was no special request that went from SpaceX to Google. Like they're just compartmentalized portions of the same overarching system, the same kingdom of this world. That's how it works. That's how the whole stupid pyramid works. That's what corporations are. You know, oh, okay, we're going to control the food system. Well, we got a handful of corporations that own all the food chain. Got a handful of corporations that make all of the cars. We got a handful of corporations that build everything for all the militaries in the world. We got a handful of corporations that build all these spaceships and alleged satellites and everything else. We got a handful of corporations that dominating the internet and this is easy stuff, guys. Just like you're able to see, like once the blinders are off and you're able to see how easy it is for them to actually fool the world with silly little skits and silly little stunts, like whether it's the ISS or this SpaceX stuff. You know, we don't have it all figured out, but people want to believe it, right? Just like people want to believe that, you know, we're on the cusp of creating our own new golden era. We're right on the cusp of a true free and egalitarian society. We're on the cusp of the next quantum leap in human evolution. We're on the cusp of, you know, the big breakthrough, the big revolution, the big whatever. We're gonna do it ourselves. But we're broken. We're fallen. We're sinful. We bring the evil with us, with whatever we do. That's why we're so easily manipulated by the enemy. Through our pride, through our rebellion against God, through our rejection of His moral law that we've all broken. It's so simple, guys. It's so simple. Either sin is real because good and evil are defined by the Creator, or there's no such thing. And everything goes. And it's no different than if there was a Big Bang and everything was an accident and everything just happened randomly and there's no rhyme or reason to any of it. Because if everything is God, it's no different than if there was no God. Because you can't condemn part of God. It's still God. If you believe in any type of pantheistic, panpsychism, whatever, then everything is just temporary manifestations of good or bad that don't mean anything. It's all just movement. It's all just a cosmic dance. But you know in your heart that that's not reality. You chafe against the lies. You chafe against evil because it's really evil. And sooner or later, you're going to have to deal with that question. And I don't want it to be when you're standing before the Creator. Because we all are going to. We're all going to face Him. Elon Musk is going to face the Creator. And at that point, he's going to have no phone calls he can make. His billions of dollars won't mean crap. They won't be with him. Just be another man before the Creator. And he'll have to answer. And all these evil men and women will have to answer to the Creator. And everything will be called into account. All this nonsense will be put to rest. Every lie will be exposed. Every murder will be dealt with. Every deception, every form and type of wickedness. But the only one we really have to worry about answering to is our own. Because we're all guilty. We're all sinners. It's the great equalizer. I spent a lot of years sinning more than most. I know how real it is. And I know a lot of you have experienced, have had horrible experiences with Christianity and with people who claim to believe the Bible, and you've experienced real, genuine abuse in the name of Jesus, and that stuff's going to be dealt with too. All the religious hypocrisy, all the horrible things that have been done in His name. I mean, when you read the words of Jesus, He had harsher things to say towards the religious hypocrites and the people who blasphemed God by their hypocrisy than almost anyone. The Pharisees and the Sadducees and the religious leaders. I shudder for them. He's not fooling around. God is not fooling around. But He's real, and Satan's real. And he's doing the same thing he's been doing since the very beginning, and that's just lying, turning people away from God, making empty promises about having their eyes opened and learning the secrets of the universe, and learning to be God for themselves. That's what he does. I would just wish you guys would stop and see it. Like, there's no human explanation for this collusion, this level of collaboration, this level of conspiracy and deception. There is no human level rationale. It's not about money. It's not even about power. It's about they are spiritually deceived and spiritually controlled and spiritually deluded. And that's the agenda for everyone, to turn every single last one of us away from God. That is Satan's goal, to get every last soul on the face of the flat earth to reject God and to deny Him and to raise their fist at Him. It's so obvious, you guys. Just like all these globers, where you just put evidence after evidence after evidence, and they make excuses, and they stomp their feet, and they plug their ears, and they call you names. Are you doing the same thing? Are you denying the plain and obvious evidence for the God of the Bible? He loves you. And if you want to be offended and mad because I'm telling you that God's real and He loves you, then so be it. I want you all to see. More than anything, I just want you to know your Maker, to know your Savior, and to know what real hope and real peace feels like, and to have the burden lifted off, and have the blinders lifted off, have the confusion, you know what I mean? I don't have all the answers to everything, but I have all the answers that I need for this life to explain all this madness, all this messed up crap, all this deception, all these agendas that are going on. It's so crazy, and yet it's all so simple. And the Word of God just bears it all open, shows it for what it is.